Hey guys, I don't know if you caught our last video, but Nick here, expert on all things energy and transportation, took a deep dive into Nikola Motor. Nikola Corp, Nikola Motor.
Whatever the name is.
Whatever they want to call themselves. They don't really do anything yet, so we can call them whatever we want. Nick, why don't you just give us like a 1-minute overview of what you found? Like what was the main issue with Nikola? What are the promising aspects? Just whatever you want to talk about, just keep it short.
Sounds good, Sean. Well, in the video, I kind of broke down in more of a strategy behind Nikola instead of talking about their numbers. And what I said that, this is really an infrastructure company as well as a car manufacturer. And what they're really trying to focus on is hydrogen. And hydrogen is a very difficult fuel to implement for the transportation space. And we kind of touched on how difficult it could be from a different perspective. And I think for Nikola company, that's what really the puzzle going to be to solve is how they can do the hydrogen for transportation at a large scale. And I think that's a challenge that, they have to work really hard on. And that's what a lot of people trying to buy into this company don't really understand. And that's why I think we did a good job kind of breaking it down in this intro video.
Yeah, basically, from my understanding, if you didn't catch the last video, is Nikola needs kind of an empire of infrastructure since nobody else is really in the hydrogen space. They can't really partner with anyone that doesn't exist. So they kind of have to build the whole infrastructure for their hydrogen vehicles all on their own. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's a little crazy because the first time I ever heard about Nikola was about a year ago or so. And I met that guy who was the CEO of Nikola at the conference.
Trevor Milton?
That guy. And so he, kind of displayed the vision of building 700 travel stops in the next 10 years. And, I work for a company who has been in transportation business for 50 years. And they just built their 500 gas stations in 50 years. So the timeline for this is not really realistic.
And they're like top 50 in Forbes, yeah?
Yeah.
So.
And they also don't have to build the production facilities right on site, which is exactly what Nikola is trying to do.
Yeah, so if you didn't catch the last video, they actually have to produce all their power on site. They can't bring it in through power lines. They can't truck in the hydrogen. They can do all these things, but there's issues with it. So why don't you talk about a few of those issues?
Yeah, I think, one thing that I touched on is the actual kind of amount of space that you would need to just put enough renewable infrastructure on there. In order to power those big electrolyzers, you need a huge amount of capacity. And oftentimes, solar is not really as efficient right now in order to produce it like a bunch of power in a small space. You need about 100 acres to really implement their solution. And if you have 100 acres, it's not really a gas station.
You probably shouldn't spend it on a gas station.
That's my point, right? It's a power producing unit.
Might as well just be a utility and make a power plant.
Absolutely right.
But why is it that they even have to produce all the power on site? Why can't they just hook up a power line to their electrolysis?
Yeah, so one of the problems that I've talked about in the video is that sometimes these gas stations need to be placed on highways in the middle of nowhere. And this is really hard to build a truck stop with a bunch of extra power capacity on a highway because oftentimes those voltages, not going to be enough to produce the actual hydrogen there or to put anything significant on site. And that's why oftentimes they just have to build it on site in order to actually have enough power and produce the hydrogen there. The second part is actually the electricity cost that, we also touched on.
Yeah, so most big pop-in truck stops I see are right outside of small towns with populations under 5,000. And they have enough power for themselves, and whoever wants to open up a regular gas station. But if you want to run a whole electrolysis plant, how much power do you even need for that?
Something that they mentioned on their website, that news that they bought they placed a new electrolyzer purchase with Nel, who is a big electrolyzer company. And they bought enough electrolyzer for 5 gas stations, which a long way of saying they need about 17 megawatts of power for one of those stations to use this equipment that they just purchased.
So what is this equipment?
That's an electrolyzer. What electrolyzer does is basically it takes water and it pushes power through it, and it breaks down the molecule of water, hydrogen and oxygen. And hydrogen is captured in the tanks and oxygen is let go. And that's the way to produce hydrogen through renewable power. And that's what the zero emission conversation is always talking about.
So they have 5 of these.
No, they don't have 5 of it. They placed an order for 5 of this.
Okay, but they're going to build 700 gas stations in 10 years, yeah?
Yes.
All right, they're going to do it. They said it. So just how much electricity is needed to just manage the same traffic as like a normal truck stop would, whether it be an electric truck stop or a diesel traditional truck stop like Pilots or Loves or Flying J or wherever it is where you're from?
I think the regular gas station would need about, not exaggerating, but it's 100 times less energy than this truck stop. Because usually the truck stop really, they don't need enough of, a lot of power, because all they need to do is just run a very small travel stop and a bunch of pumps. And that's about it. That, probably going to take about 200,000 kilowatt hours a year, which is about twice the regular load for a house, for a commercial house, not a commercial, for a residential house. And these guys need something like a 300 of regular residential houses. And that's why, the power equation really doesn't work out. And it's just going to be a huge hurdle for them, not only from the perspective of just being able to put enough equipment, but also to get the approvals to build something like this, because the whole power market is so regulated and utilities have a monopoly in it. In order to get the access to power, you need to also sign a contract with the utility. And oftentimes the biggest problem is just these utilities or whoever balancing authority or authority in this territory going to be.
It's very regional.
Yeah, and they're not going to give you approvals to build a freaking power plant in the middle of the highway.
Okay, so you want me to power a town or power your gas station? Screw off, dude.
And it's a big load for the actual grid, and there is a lot of complexity that goes to it. But the point is it's risky for the operator of that power grid to allow something like this to come online. So I think it's also a problem from regulatory perspective.
Okay, so from my understanding, the perks of hydrogen, we've been kind of trash talking them a little bit, rightfully so, maybe. But what are the perks of hydrogen versus electric versus diesel? How is it more beneficial? Obviously, it's versus diesel, it's renewable, but versus electric, why don't you just use electric for a semi?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that a lot of people just want to go electric because it's renewable from the tailpipe. And whenever regular people think about zero emission vehicles, they always think about being zero emission from the tailpipe. So hydrogen really is only one that fits that mindset of electric. That it doesn't produce any carbon dioxide right from the car, which then
from the car.
And it's a whole conversation that we can go in later. But the point is, hydrogen is a zero emission in perspective of a lot of people who don't think about energy as much as I do. And the hydrogen is actually very light. So it's pretty easy to put hydrogen in a tank, and it doesn't take a lot of weight to carry it. And with the battery and electric, problem often is that the battery just weighs so much. So you'll have to cut down on your valuable payload that you can carry in your truck. And by doing this, you're kind of sacrificing your revenue from a truck that no one would want to do. And that's why hydrogen kind of solves this issue with extra battery weight and allows people to have the same zero emission benefits while not having the battery.
Okay, so I get why that's appealing to semis, but I mean, it's kind of a tangent, but why are they building hydrogen consumer vehicles? Because, I mean, are you really worried about the weight of your pickup truck or your, just car or jet ski, apparently.
Yep. I think you touched on a great point, and let me clarify, because I think the website is very confusing, and maybe we're going to put some images on there to show that they have a whole lineup of different things, right? They have an electric truck. They have the actual, 18-wheelers, right?
Yeah.
Which can be both hydrogen and electric, I think, at this point. And then they have also power sports, a bunch of other jet ski, right? You said a freaking jet ski. But those last things, like the jet ski, I think it's electric. I don't think it's hydrogen. And I think also the power sports are electric.
You can't just pull the water right out of the light.
I know, it produces right on the vehicle.
It'd be magical.
I know, that would be cool. I think that's the whole, in my view, issue with this company, that they trying to now be much more kind of consumer appealing and put a bunch of different models on their website, get the pre-order, get the bus going, without actually doing the car itself. I think they created a very good truck that, if you compare them to Tesla or someone like this, whenever Tesla came in with their first car, they put all the efforts in actually making this car being the best car in their lineup and making it work. And in this analogy, Nikola should also probably focus on their truck, get it on the road, build a freaking manufacturing facility to produce it, and they move on to all the other things that they're doing. But right now, I feel like they're all over the place, and they're doing it in order to get the buzz from the Wall Street and get people excited about the car manufacturing company of Nikola Motor.
Building a company the right way, that's just slow and boring. Who wants to watch that? Analysts want action. They want jet skis. They want ATVs.
Yeah. And to be fair, that works, right? Stock is going up. They can talk on the news about we get 1 billion pre-orders that, by the way, pre-order doesn't cost anything to place. So.
Why do you think they were the headliner at whatever conference you were at? It's because they had something cool to show everybody.
So that's why I think that it's a lot with this company, and people should not be that much focused on the car manufacturing portion. They want to be focused on the infrastructure portion. If they want to give them the same valuation as they give to Tesla.
Yeah, but a solar infrastructure versus a hydrogen infrastructure. As we've, just like the topics we've talked about, we can see there's clearly a difference. So another topic that I really thought was kind of interesting was it takes a lot of electricity to produce this hydrogen. But how much of that electricity actually gets converted into power versus if I were to just plug my car in? Sure, it takes longer to charge, but am I getting a lot more use out of that electricity?
Whenever you're using the electricity and it goes straight to the electric truck or electric car, I'm going to probably skew the numbers a little bit, but we're going to show a diagram right here. It's going to capture about 73% of this energy with Tesla or something like this. Whenever you go the hydrogen route, you have to do all these extra steps, with converting it to hydrogen, then converting it back to electricity. And as a result, you left about 23% of the power that you started with. So from the perspective of energy efficiency, that's not really a great equation to kind of achieve hydrogen.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it. Just from my perspective, I'm exactly what I said in the beginning. Why don't you just be a utility if you're just going to produce this much power to convert it to such an inefficient fuel that there's no infrastructure for and no other vehicles that use it? And yeah, that's cool. It's revolutionary. It's science fiction almost, but why? You don't need it.
I think, I want to support this company in any way I can and really cheer for the big vision that this year puts out. And I would love for them to succeed. I think it's something cool that people don't think about. And if there would be more hydrogen trucks on the road, the world would be probably a more interesting place to live in. And that's why I think it's important to just have fresh ideas. And even there are people like us who are going to break down and, talk bad about you and saying how unrealistic you are in trying to achieve it. I think it's also, important just for the world to see those type of visionaries who can put the idea together. I think the problem going to be is just actually execution, right? That, Tesla had a person who could execute on those ideas. And does Nikola have a person who can execute on those ideas? I don't know. But if it does and he succeeds, I think that's definitely a company going to worth billions of dollars. Like it's all it does, pretty much.
I mean, even if the concepts were equally ridiculous and optimistic, I mean, at least Elon Musk, like he co-founded PayPal and a lot of other things before he even stepped foot on Tesla. I mean, he builds rockets and everything.
Yep.
That's a certain amount of credibility that Trevor Milton, who
do you know anything about his resume or something like that?
I think he just has a GED. I don't think so he has a high school equivalent, but I've heard he's claimed to start other e-commerce companies or something. He said he couldn't keep up with demand or something along those lines, but I don't want to say anything because I don't know anything about the guy. That's word of mouth, but
in the conference where I saw him, he definitely was one of the most enthusiastic people that presented there. And I think he's a hell of a salesperson. I think he can sell that stuff. And I think you see proven the numbers that they have a lot of pre-orders and their stock is sky high. I think there is a difference between a salesperson and actually the person who can build the company. And I hope he's both.
Yeah, and if he's not, I hope he has somebody on board that he trusts that's selling him this idea they're telling him that he can do it. And if he's selling it wholeheartedly, believing that he can do it, great for him. He's really fueling a lot of growth. He's obviously attracted a lot of attention, especially from investors, without even selling a dime. So, I'm rooting for him too. Full disclosure, I managed some stocks for my parents and I encouraged them to invest. My dad bought 10 shares of the VTIQ, the SPAC that took him public. So yeah, I'm rooting for him. I have incentive, but does that make me think it's any less ridiculous? No. I think I expect that stock to go to right where it came from, the 1036 or whatever. Paid for it.
So maybe not all of our viewers know what the SPAC is and the way how Nikola went public. And I think that's actually a growing trend, how people now trying to go this direction. So if you understand it, you want to elaborate on it?
There's actually somebody else. I was watching CNBC today, and I think it's Fisker Electric Vehicles. They're also going public with a SPAC, ticker SPAQ or something. But basically, I'm no expert, but a SPAC is basically like a blank check company. So a company forms this acquisition company and they get money from investors, and usually it's like $10 a share. Everybody puts in a bunch of money. They don't know what they're going to acquire. They might have some idea, but they don't really know. And then the company takes all the money they raise from however many people bought these $10 shares or whatever. I think in Nikola's case, it was honestly, I don't know. But
here's the number.
Here's the number right here. There is this
number. Research it.
Here. But anyway, they just take this money and they go, and in this case, they acquired Nikola, and then they give everyone a chance to vote on the acquisition, usually, not in all cases. But if you don't like the company they chose, say you voted against the acquisition, they give you the opportunity to redeem your shares at the $10 or whatever they started at. Some of them, just like some of them allow voting on and some of them allow redemption. It's case by case. You have to read the fine print, definitely, if you're going to invest in a SPAC. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but that's in essence how it works. And then they do a reverse merger where they translate this acquisition company into the public company and they change the ticker. And it's like a direct listing, but it's like private equity guys going out and immediately making a company public with public money.
And I think what's really good about this process, and maybe the reason why it's on the rise, is because the companies don't have to go through this 3 months of talking to people on the Wall Street and meeting everyone in person and this roadshow that everyone has
And
to
a
do
lot of
for the
people
IPO.
are like really seeing the kind of BS that goes on in the private equity space. They all have their 5-year exit plan. They all want to pump you full of leverage and they just feed debt and cash into your company, and then they just spend it all on marketing and growth, which it's artificial growth because
We work.
yeah, I don't know. They're selling all these or they're buying all these ads, and it translates to a certain amount of sales. And yeah, maybe they earn $1 for every $30 they spend on ads, but they just dump so much debt into it that they fuel this growth.
Okay.
And they keep raising the valuation each round until they can't keep up with the valuation, because guess what? That growth was fueled by debt. And at a certain point, they stop lending to you because you're not making any cash. And then all of a sudden you're dead. But it doesn't matter, because the guy that raised the Class A round, he made his 10x and he's out, and his investors are happy. So a lot of people don't want to do that. That's why Spotify did direct listing. I think Slack did too. Google had their creative Dutch auction thing. You know, everyone's looking for alternative ways to go public. And right now the SPAC's pretty hot. So,
yeah. Well, that's on a side note. Nikola.
Sorry, I went on a tangent there.
No,
but,
yeah, that's good. Good
anyway.
content.
But I mean, that's the other thing, is if they went public through the SPAC, and I've seen the return just in my E-Trade account. It was like 700% at one point. If you don't know anything about the IPO market, is when you see a company open and it's up like 60% in the first day, that's a terrible IPO.
You better short that company.
Because the whole point of an IPO is to raise money. Yeah, sure. The owners, the guys that have the shares, they're happy, like their shares are worth more. Great. But at the same time, your share could have been worth that much, and you also could have raised an extra 60% more funding for the company in your IPO process. So the fact, I'm not super familiar with the intricacies of a SPAC, so maybe I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like this was a terribly inefficient way to raise money for a company that it sounds like they're going to need a lot of capital. This is going to be a very capital intensive company. 700 gas stations in 10 years. You don't do that with inefficient financing.
Yes, sir. And I would be actually curious, and if any of our listeners know what the cost of one of those travel stops would be, it, in my view, going to be more millions than the regular gas stations.
I mean, it's got to be. I mean, they're building a power plant. They're building a solar farm. They're building... I mean, maybe they have other ways of doing it. I'd be curious to see what Nikola's realistic strategy is. I know they have this, I'm watching this little rendering on their hydrogen page right now, go on repeat of the thing you showed in your last video, their truck stop. And you described how they're just wasting all this space. They need all of this space times 5 to be covered in solar panels to cover the electricity that they need. So it's just...
Plus, they don't show any hydrogen tanks on that rendering, where they have to have a lot of actual tanks to store it. But I think you touched on a good point where it's like, what is really Nikola trying to do? Because if their actual plan is to build those hydrogen stations, and because the way how they thinking about making money is leasing the trucks and providing this holistic infrastructure for servicing those trucks, for fueling those trucks, and everyone just going to be kind of on a subscription fee with them. Which
subscriptions are hot right now.
That's maybe why. But I think the good question is what is really they going to do? How are they going to bring the first $1 million into the bank?
I mean, it sounds like they're not going to make money for a long time. They might have some cash flows, but it sounds like it's all going to be going to repaying the debt it's going to take to build this huge infrastructure for a long time. So free cash flow to equity, non-existent for decades, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they find some other way to make this infrastructure more profitable than just the fueling and the vehicles themselves and everything, but
I wouldn't be surprised if they change their mind in the middle of it. if they try to build this 5 stops, because all they really needed to do is to create the buzz and get Nikola brand on the market. And I think they successfully done that, because how many electric car companies show up on the market every day? It feels like every day I'm reading about new supercar that's going to be electric now. But with Nikola, they now well known on the Wall Street and things like this. And if 3 years from now, they're going to be like, okay, guys, we're not going to go hydrogen route. We're going to go electric. And all of our cars now going to be electric. They're just going to be an electric car manufacturer. And I think it's going to be a solid one. I think their cars looks pretty cool. And I actually sat in their truck and it looks dope. So don't get me wrong, it's a cool car. But that's the way how I think this company can turn out to something real.
I mean, I'll consider it when I see one drive. Like, what the heck, man? It's all prototypes. It's all renderings. It's all freaking statues.
Well, I think we could touch back on this thing in December whenever they supposed to open the first Nikola World, where they probably gonna have more Nikola show trucks.
Freaking P.T. Barnum, he's just a showman. Just Nikola World. How about cancel Nikola World? Whatever you're gonna spend on Nikola World, start building a production facility or build one of these damn gas stations. Show people the concept. You want to host a Nikola World? Host it at your first hydrogen gas station, because I don't believe it'll ever exist.
That's such a good point. And I think, maybe we could touch a little bit on the whole point about hydrogen being renewable and hydrogen being better than diesel.
Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother can of worms.
Exactly. And because I've did the research for my work and in general understand this industry, in like 10 seconds, hydrogen in 3 years from now are going to be polluting more than diesel trucks, because diesel standards has to always improve and cars always get to be efficient.
More and more percentage of diesel is biodiesel and renewable diesel and things of that sort, and they're real strict about raising that, right?
And like 90% of hydrogen is produced from steam methane reforming, which is basically you burning methane and splitting the molecules into CO2 and the hydrogen.
That doesn't sound very cool.
And that's polluting more carbon dioxide than producing any other fuel would be. And that's another thing that people are just like, let's be hydrogen. And all you're doing with this is just moving your pollutions from one area to somewhere else in the middle of the country where there's going to be this huge production plant doing hydrogen. Because I don't think you can do huge amount of small electrolyzers around the US like Nikola is trying to do. It has to be one centralized facility that can produce it at a large scale and make it cheap enough where the electricity is cheap and stuff like this. Otherwise, it's just, not going to be renewable. And that's why the whole thing about hydrogen being renewable is, I'm just done with it.
There's just so many. I mean, it just seems to me that every process, whether it be that reforming, whatever he just said.
SMR. SMR is a ticker for dirty hydrogen.
Okay. Anyway, so there's that, which sounds unbelievably dirty. And then there's electricity in general, which can be clean, but not necessarily the case, And
again, I mean, most of the electricity is not renewable.
And the thing is, even if the electricity is clean, there's so much electricity being used out there to power people's homes and to even power electric vehicles or just the grid in general that's unclean. Why would you waste this electricity on such an inefficient process when you could, if you want to help the environment, then take away the electric producers that actually cause the problem before you go and start wasting all this electricity on something that's clean. Yeah, it's clean because I see water coming out of the tailpipe, but where did that power originally source from? Exactly.
So I think that's a lot of downsides to Nikola, if you can call it this way. I think there are plus sides as well, as we discussed. It's new, it's innovative. It long haul, it is better than electric if it can be produced on site renewably somehow, which is a puzzle for me to solve. Well, it's thankfully not for me, but for Nikola to solve. But I think there's also good things about the idea that I don't want to sweat it.
I mean, like, yeah, I think it's a really cool concept, you know. But when science guys talk about cool science content, I'm like, that's really interesting.
Yep.
Can you do it in the real world, though? I mean, that's cool for like Neil deGrasse Tyson to talk about on Cosmos, but
you know what I found funny? I saw Shaq, Shaquille O'Neal, that basketball player. He posted on his Instagram. Well, where I'm coming from, not everyone knows that.
You like Christoph Porzingis or whatever.
Okay. Hockey and soccer, that's it. The point is, he posted like randomly in his feed on Instagram a picture of Nikola's rack. So saying like, I just placed one. Like,
placed the order?
Yeah, so they kind of, I guess, I cannot imagine him just placing an order by himself. I'm pretty sure it was a part of the promotion, which was kind of shameless.
I mean, yeah, I bet Trevor Milton hit him up and say, yo, Shaq's shameless. You've seen him on those General Insurance commercials. Like, he's riding around in a little animated Corvette with the General. Like, Shaq doesn't care. He just wants that check. And even if he did pre-order this out of, like, his own interest, like, good for him. It's really interesting. I might pre-order one of their trucks. They look cool.
It doesn't. Oh, no, this one actually costs something.
Oh, but the truck. Okay, well, most of their vehicles cost nothing to reserve, right? And then they go out and Trevor Milton does his big showman thing and says, look how many reservations we have. Tesla only had this many. Well, Tesla actually charged people to reserve them. So, I mean, this is supposed to be like a pro and cons kind of thing. And I'm obviously have an opinion one way. But, I mean, there's some good things to say about them. I just can't find them.
Yeah. Well, if any of you guys actually bought the stock and see something positive in it,
I mean, yeah, comment down below. Like, show me the light. I want to know because I'm rooting for these guys. I mean, when I just see something so ridiculous, it just makes me want to call bullshit, you know?
I think the problem with me personally, I'm a very conservative in my financial investments. And I like gamble whenever it's a justifiable, gamble and a good return on risk. Yeah. But here it's like, I don't see this company succeeding in reality as of right now before they solve those many issues. And the stock is already at $20 billion. I mean,
the growth would have to be absolutely insane. Because, I mean, if you think of a high multiple, whether it be price to earnings, price to EBITDA, EV to EBITDA, anything, the only reason that multiple is high is because they expect a crap ton of growth. And not only is Nikola's high, it's unexistent because they don't have the freaking the denominator to make the multiple. Like, they don't have any earnings. Let's not even talk about earnings.
Do they not have any earnings at all? Because I didn't like...
Well, how can you have earnings without revenue? Besides pre-orders, but if you know anything about accounting, that's unearned revenue.
Yeah, it's a liability. But still, I think it's a good topic for people to argue about. And I think from a financial perspective, I wish there would be more to talk about on the leverage and things like this.
We're numbers guys. We like to do valuations, but there's nothing here. So we just have to talk about the concepts. We have to talk about
which is
the markets they're talking about going into. Yeah, they're non-existent markets, but there are comparables and they're a lot more realistic.
I mean, to be frank, I think there's only one company who is similar to Nikola, which is Tesla, because a lot of people comparing these companies to Ford, GM, and things like this. And GM is just a car manufacturer. And Tesla is an integrated company where they produce the power that they use in the cars, and there's a lot of revenue streams in the middle. And that's what Nikola, I think, is trying to copy. And that's why whenever you evaluate it, and a lot of people, especially on Bloomberg, talk about Nikola is more valuable than Ford now. I'm like, that's like comparing,
It's apples to oranges.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's the justifiable way for people to give them larger valuation, car manufacturer company. But if you do that, you better know how to make hydrogen and what it takes. So watch our video.
Yeah, but I like that you brought that up because I think a lot of people, maybe even some of these viewers, took a short position on Tesla. Hopefully they didn't actually short sell the stock because they probably got squeezed out of their position. And the reason they would do this is because they see, oh, they just passed up Ford, they just passed up GM, like, short. That's not the same thing. Yeah, they make vehicles, but they bought Solar City a long time ago, right? And they have this whole infrastructure, and they have so many things besides just Tesla. I mean, they're also a technology play, the Internet of Things, autonomous driving. They're going to connect their cars to a cell phone tower. I mean, they already do.
And I mean, they can just license their software for autopilot to any other company because they have more mileage than anyone else, right? And that's a whole other revenue stream that I don't think they monetize. But knowing Tesla, they probably will at some point.
I mean, there's so much technology in their cars that could be expanded to so many things besides vehicles, and they are doing that. And it's just...
I wish I would buy it when it was at 500 in March.
I'm not gonna lie, I was a Tesla hater. I was one of those people like, oh, it's ridiculous. Tesla's only sold 90,000 cars. How are they more valuable than Ford? Like, this is ridiculous. Anyone that buys Tesla is an idiot. I was one of those guys. Man, do I feel like the idiot now. I'm just like, and even in March, I mean, I guess I wasn't paying attention. I probably would have jumped on it, but they dropped down to like 350 something.
I think 500, that's the number that I was like, I should buy it, but probably I'm going to wait a little more days to.
I don't know, but they just said, screw it. I was like, car company, they'll probably
1,500. Let's talk about it in a minute. Elon Musk worth more than Buffett at this point. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of, a little insane because I grew up with Warren Buffett as this idol of being extra rich and things. And I think Musk went from the, number 15 in the list to number 2 or whatever his number is at this point.
A lot of people don't give, I can't say that. A lot of people don't give Warren Buffett enough credit. They give him plenty of credit. He's on the, anyone that writes a freaking value investing book says the philosophies of Graham and Buffett and Munger. And so they have lots of clout when it comes to finance. They're very well appreciated. But I'm saying, he's not a creator, he's an investor. So the fact that he could produce that much wealth by just investing in other people's ideas is very impressive. Because Elon Musk, some would say this is much more admirable. He went out and he started big things with big ideas, and he executed them, and he made them profitable. PayPal, SpaceX, Tesla. He's a creator. So I think he almost, I wouldn't say deserves that wealth more, but I think he really, really earned it. And whereas Warren Buffett just kind of outsmarted a lot of people that didn't know what they had, Yep.
I think that's a good discussion.
Anyway, that's a whole nother tangent.
We're
talking about Nikola here. But if we're talking about dollars, we can't talk about Nikola.
Right. Well, do you think there's anything else we should touch on for this video?
If you guys are new to our channel, which you probably are because we're new to our channel, you should, so Nick here posted a video describing what we just talked about in detail. And in these videos, we'll invite you to leave comments and questions because we'll follow up those videos with a discussion like this. So if you have anything you want to discuss, maybe you saw something on his video, said, oh, why doesn't Nikola do this? Why are they doing this? What is realistic in regards to this? Drop it down below. We'll usually post it about a week after the other video. So you have some time to drop some insightful questions, and we'll take them into consideration before we have this discussion. So we invite you to keep following us. We'll be posting more company interviews or overviews, followed by interviews.
Here we go,
so just join us if you find the topic interesting, engage in the conversation. We'll comment back and talk about it in the next video.
Exactly. If you have any questions about Nikola, leave it down below. If you disagree with us, leave it down below. If you think this video sucks, leave it down below.
Yeah, go ahead.
Otherwise, like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, get the algos going for us, puts us up in the searches. But
Thank you all for watching.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.